Welcome back to another episode of The Glorious Rescue. It is long awaited, long overdue, because we did miss the last episode, our very first episode that we did miss, and that is on me. I do apologize. That's what I wanted to start off this episode by doing, is apologizing to all of you, and we did adjust and fix the problem and all of that, and it shouldn't be an issue. Moving forward. So just note that episodes for all of the new listeners here every Tuesday and Friday. This episode specifically, this Friday, this episode is going to be a highlight reel, and immediately the naysayers are probably like, oh, it's, Josiah, for you to do less work and all that. These types of episodes actually take me much more time, much more work to actually put together for all of you. So I do hope it's helpful to you, just as we kind of look back over the last several episodes, some of the highlights, and hopefully it is a help to you. And then, of course, you say, Josiah, I don't like these episodes. Well, make sure to hit that subscribe button and be ready for Tuesday, because we will be back here on a Tuesday with all of the latest. So get ready, buckle up, and here we go.
Aren't you tired of feeling forced to choose between staying informed and being indoctrinated? Listen to the condensed news cycle without the lies, agendas, and confusion from the mainstream media, all while engaging in deeper discussions about the principles that have influenced our great nation. This is what rescuing America looks like. This is the Glorious Rescue.
We already talked about Iran coming out and already making huge steps towards nuclear warheads, developing parts. They are now currently manufacturing parts for nuclear warheads. And this is what the history of our nation is going to be for the next 4 years. It is going to be United States, America, and Americans last. It is going to be restricting our economy to support your lack of science, to make your group of people feel better about themselves at the expense of American jobs, and the American economy, and allowing other nations to prosper. I want you to remember back to 2016. In 2016, after Trump was elected, how many Democrats, how many members of the mainstream media, how many politicians berated and struck down and ripped open the Electoral College, saying the anti-democracy of the system. The American system is anti-democratic. There were millions and millions of more people who voted for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. Why do we not have democracy prevail in America? Why is it that we have systems in place that are so anti-democratic they threaten the very survival of our people? If you remember, that was the story of the 2016 election, because Donald Trump won substantially in the Electoral College because he won the states, he campaigned properly, and he campaigned the way you ought to in America and in American elections, and Hillary Clinton did not. And so you had that disparity between the popular vote and the electoral vote, and they were against it. Well, now you have Joe Biden in his victory speech, like I mentioned, his fourth one or fifth one after he won the electoral vote. He said he called it basically the democratic system, or the wonderful American system that we have, the Electoral College. And we had all of these individuals across mainstream media, across the Democratic Party, and high politicians saying that democracy prevails. And in the end, democracy will prevail because of the Electoral College. Again, the huge flip, the huge switch from just 4 years ago. I wonder if they think that, we have like this reset. The American people have this reset after 2 years. We don't remember what goes on. The counterfeit of freedom, the fake freedom, the false concept of freedom is the idea that we're free to live how we want. Free to live, free from the obligations of morality, responsibility, and truth, like he says. It is what our nation's founders expressly distinguished from liberty and condemned as, quote, license. This is the key here. The so-called freedom celebrated today by so many of our opinion-shaping elitists in education, entertainment, and the media is simply the license to do whatever one pleases. This false conception of freedom, false because disordered because detached from moral truth and civic responsibility, shackles those in its grip no less powerfully than did the chattel slavery of old. He is stating that there is not only a concept of slavery back prior to the 1860s in our nation's history, the idea of actual slavery, enslaving one by force, coercion, or even government tyranny. There is a deeper sense of false freedom, or a deeper sense of slavery, a deeper meaning of slavery, being slave to our own vice, being slaved to mankind's own immorality. It's a false conception of freedom, and it shackles people, like he says, in its grip no less powerfully than the old slavery. Jake Tapper has the benefit of being able to work remotely, being able to work in an environment where he can socially distance, where he can follow protocols, still be deemed essential, and still make his paycheck. Bill Gates obviously still making his paycheck. Microsoft still doing well. most Americans don't have that opportunity. I can sit here and say that I'm very grateful to still have the opportunity to work a job because the government, thank the Lord, the government has deemed me, quote, essential, is stupid. The government deeming certain places essential and non-essential, deeming church essential versus non-essential. People saying, open up the churches, quote, church is essential. No, that's not the argument. The argument is that the government doesn't have a right to label us essential versus non-essential. Why do we think the government should label the church essential? We should really be arguing that the church, or that the government rather, doesn't have the wherewithal, doesn't have the standing to label us essential versus non-essential whatsoever. Well, the last story is San Francisco High School renaming their Abraham Lincoln High School because, Abraham Lincoln was oppressive to African Americans, to slavery. He's a dark stain on the history for Black people in our nation as a president specifically because, he was the only president. He was really the president that we can give credit to. The Emancipation Proclamation, the Civil War, willing to fight over the abolishment of slavery. But that, that means absolutely nothing because, we don't care about logic. We don't care about actually looking at history. We're going to go ahead and go back and revise our own history books and then basically interpret today off of the history that we wrote, that we edited, and not what actually went down. And now, if you guessed it, you might have guessed it. That's actually what we are talking about for today's end of show segment. Abraham Lincoln and his farewell address. What Joe Biden is trying to do is portray all those who don't believe and follow his and support his administration are the racists. He's literally dividing the nation upon his own policies as if you disagree with me, you are a racist because you don't believe in the American ideal, as he's trying to give this speech calling for quote-unquote unity. It's so embarrassingly evil. It's so egregiously awful, in my opinion, as well, because again, as you are calling for unity, what you are doing is saying that those who will not unite are because they are racist and because they don't believe in the American ideal. When in reality, we do. We support it. That's why we didn't vote for you. So just more idiocy from our elected officials. Here's another example of Pelosi. One of her most recent quotations, actually. I should say this, that it is actually quotations when used as a noun, not quotes. So a little fun fact for you there. Oh yeah, we haven't been doing fun facts on the show. Okay, I got to get back to it really quickly so we make sure we have ample time for end of show segment. She said basically the coronavirus pandemic has, quote, pulled back the curtain to reveal further disparities in our income and in our society. Clearly, the disparities in income and equity in our country are vast. I don't really know who she's referring to other than herself because, again, I go back to how much she makes per year doing honestly nothing. So if she's trying to talk about disparities in income in society, I really think that... Does she really believe in her mind that everyone makes what she makes? I can't get over that. I cannot get over the fact that Nancy Pelosi sits on her throne with her little crown and her little wand waving and blessing the Americans after 6 months with $600 after shutting down all of their businesses. And she says that there are income disparities and equity disparities in our American economy and in our incomes. Like, no duh, Nancy Pelosi. But the best part is she talks about how the disparities have gotten worse. The funny thing about it is and the blowback that she's gotten from it is that she owns a $24,000 fridge. That's where I make the statement. It's not everything's about you, Joe Biden. Some things are actually in the hearts of the American people. Sometimes the American people are not actually thinking about you, Joe Biden. They just want to know if, the son of a vice president at that time was pulling strings, was using his dad's presidential power or vice presidential power to make money off of foreign governments, being able to really manipulate and misuse power to his own advantage. Because, the modern American, the main American, the typical American does not have the access to those types of relationships, that type of corruption, like you would, Hunter Biden, like you would, Joe Biden as well. It used to be that the U.S. ambassador to Israel was called just that, the U.S. ambassador, quote, the U.S. ambassador to Israel. The wording changed yesterday or the day before to, quote, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Why do I say that? Is because previously, in the last administration, we were pro-Israel, and we believed that the West Bank and Gaza were Israel's land. We also would say that even prior to that, even Obama and his administration didn't blatantly come out and say that this is not Israel's land. It was kind of more so, let's kick it back to them. Definitely Bush was kind of that way. He was kind of like bemuddled in the Middle East. Let's let them decide. Obama, let's let them decide. although he was very anti-Israel, don't get me wrong. But now it is very clear in the wording that the ambassador is to, this one ambassador is to Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza, differentiating the three, meaning that Gaza and the West Bank are now, in according to the eyes of the U.S. ambassador, no longer a part of Israel territory. Another example, this is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris lecturing the American people about what is the American way. Because, Kamala Harris in no way whatsoever manipulated herself to aggrandize and to promote her own political career. In no way, shape, or form in San Francisco, specifically the state of California now as the vice president-elect, in no way has she ever manipulated herself and her situations to further her own political career, even though her history is racked with those types of allegations and those types of situations of her doing just that, manipulating people and situations to her own advantage. Another one we know of is Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom did this, well, he has done this for the past 9 months with his lockdowns. Rules for thee, but not for me. Very common theme among these Democrat leaders. Really, really quickly to interject in the middle of all of these different highlights, I just wanted to have give to you a brief request, and that is as you're listening to these, to just let me know which ones were your favorite, or a certain comment or a certain thing like that. Just let me know in the comments right now. Maybe you've thought of it, or maybe it is going to come forward. And as it comes in the next few minutes of the episode, you stop and think and you say, you know what? Maybe I don't want to. Maybe it's even for subscriptions. Maybe I don't want to subscribe. But today is the day of benevolence. Today, I'm going to bestow upon Josiah an undeserving, and just out of faith, I'm going to hit that subscribe button. So you do that for me. It is greatly appreciated, that subscribe button, or maybe it's the comment and just letting me know what, maybe a certain statement or a certain topic that we covered in this highlight reel that was your favorite is always appreciated. Thank you very much, and let's get right back to it. According to the National Small Business Association, they stated that a 5% increase in minimum wage would be a loss of 1.5 million jobs, 2.5% loss of all minimum wage jobs. Like I said, you take that last one, 60 million jobs, minimum wage jobs that you saw from the last statistic, you take 2.5% of that, which is the loss, that's 1.5 million jobs lost if we raise the minimum wage by 5%. Joe Biden wants to raise the federal minimum wage by 50%. Imagine what that will do to the job market. You're a small business owner. What are you going to do? You're going to pay 2 people at a much higher rate, or you're going to pay one person even higher than that, get rid of the other person and pay one person a really good wage to do both jobs. And what you have is the media starting to lay off the attacks. And what it's going to seem like is a return back to that normalcy if Joe Biden becomes the next president, because the media is now shutting its mouth and now doing what Joe Biden wants. And Joe Biden's used to that. And so now it's going to seem like we have the calm. We're in the calm but what it really is we're not just in the calm now. And it's not that we were in a frenzy for the past 4 years because of Donald Trump, but because of the media attacking the presidency. And now we're going to have that media pulling the dial back, removing that assault, removing those relentless attacks. And now it's going to seem like a return to normalcy. Putting and ingraining into the American people, brainwashing our minds that as these Democrats are elected, that things are returning back to normal. And that as we elect Republicans, as we bring in these conservatives, things start to get crazy and the world starts to crumble as we know it. By contrast, a person given over to his appetites and passions, a person who scoffs at truth and chooses to live, whether openly or secretly, in defiance of the moral law, is not free. He is simply a different kind of slave. A little bit deeper, I guess I'm just going to go paragraph by paragraph here. But again, the idea that a free person is not just free from maybe government tyranny that we tend to think of when we think of freedom, but also means free from our own pleasures, our own appetites, our own passions. A freedom that liberates is grounded in truth. And that truth, like he says, is ordered to what? What is the pursuit of that truth for? Why? What is the whole goal of knowing truth? It's so that we can live within that confines of truth, to live a good, virtuous life. He says, under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small town barbershop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We are told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf under the heading My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work. I will save. I will sacrifice. I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost, as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. The crisis we are facing today, this is what Reagan then goes on to say, does not require of us the kind of sacrifice that Martin Treptow and so many thousands of others were called upon to make. It does require, however, our best effort and our willingness to believe in ourselves and to believe in our capacity to perform great deeds, to believe that together, with God's help, we can and will resolve the problems which now confront us. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans. God bless you, and thank you. Thank you so much for listening to The Glorious Rescue. I am Josiah Everton, reporting live here at the scene of what possibly could be 4 more years of terror, 4 more years of sheer horror, and 4 more years possibly of despotic tyranny. I'm Josiah Everton, and this is The Glorious Rescue. He also said, since when have we Americans been expected to bow submissively to authority and speak with awe and reverence to those who represent us? Kind of giving us the reminder that these people are not, yes, they are our authority, but it is, again, by the consent of the governed, that they only have the power, that which we grant them, and that we, the people, again, are the government, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's very important. The idea of self-rule, self-government that we talk often on the show. But if it says if the whole idea of elitist government, of bureaucracy, is totally askewed because you believe that elitists have to run the common man because the common man is not smart enough. But if the common man, if mankind is not smart enough to rule itself, then why in the world is mankind smart enough to rule other people? And Ronald Reagan is exactly right. He quotes someone else by saying, unrestrained freedom is anarchy. Restrained only by force and arms is despotism. Self-restrained is republicanism. And that really is the idea here, right? Living within the confines of morality, living a good life, and self-guiding and self-directing your life within the confines of truth, within the confines of what is right, what is good. And by doing so, by performing self-government, there's now no need for really a tyrannical government. There's no need for government in general because we are governing ourselves. And that is how we have true republicanism, true republican government, because we are governing ourselves. Beautiful words, very concise. He just stuck it straight to the point, very concise, but very, very helpful. And again, acknowledging of an almighty God, a divine being. He believed in God. He had a strong belief in God. He was a very strong and firm believer. And so again, it goes back to the idea of American history it completely lacks any reference to a divine being, any acknowledgement of God, our history. And throughout the American history, there's no acknowledgement of God. That narrative is being sold to us. It is in our history classes, in our high schools, in our colleges. That narrative is pushed down the throats of our young children, of our college students. And yet it is completely false, completely actually anti-historical. Again, Abraham Lincoln saying, without the assistance of the divine being, whoever attended him, I cannot succeed. With that assistance, I cannot fail. And here on The Glorious Rescue, it will be stated that the Supreme Court is not the tool of the president to simply wield at his own will, that he gets to do favors for and they turn around and do favors for them because it's a loyalty game or it's a political game. That is not what the Supreme Court is there for. You have your constitutional right as president and your duty to appoint a justice. And if that justice is approved and he's therefore nominated and placed on the bench, it is his job or her job to protect and defend the Constitution. That's what the oath is. It is not the president. Your job, you did not take the oath to the president. You took it to the Constitution. You took it to the great and wonderful United States of America, and it is their duty to do what they believe upholds that Constitution. What the actual struggle is in our nation, what the actual split is between the people who support the American ideal and not racism, but the other group is the group that believes that the American ideal is rooted in racism itself. That when those founders penned those beautiful words, they held slaves and they didn't believe that those same principles apply to all men. Even though they say all men, they didn't even believe that the slaves were even men. So therefore, the entire system is rooted in racism. It's just a group of white supremacists, of middle-aged white men creating a system of patriarchy, racism, bigotry in order to advance their wealth and their personal well-being. So Joe Biden is incredibly wrong to say that the split is between those who believe in the ideal and those who believe in racism. Because what it actually is, again, the people that agree with the ideal and the people that believe that the ideal is inherently evil, wrong, and it must be struck down and rebuilt. People were mocking Trump, saying when he came out and said, well, we should have a vaccine in a few weeks before the end of the year. At the beginning of November, he was saying, yeah, it's just a few weeks away. He was not wrong. And people were saying, medical experts saying that this is impossible, that it'd take a miracle, that he's just lying for the election purposes. Come to find out, it was here. And probably more than likely, mainstream media knew it. They just weren't reporting on it. And they were basically lying, saying medical experts say the opposite or whatnot, trying to give that agenda that they always push, because we really did have it and it was really out, but it didn't come out till after the election. And of course, now we know Biden's going to be the one, if Biden moves on, more on that in just a second, Biden and the presidency. But let's just say he is the next president. And now we have all the credit going to Joe Biden, who did absolutely nothing but sit there in the Oval Office, just sitting there as Kamala Harris runs our wonderful country. Very briefly, that is going to wrap up today's episode. I want to thank you so much for joining in. And then really quickly, just a brief reminder to go back, if you haven't commented already, to just comment what was maybe one of your favorite statements or topics that we covered in this highlight reel, one of your favorite moments. Just let me know so I kind of know what content we're looking for moving forward. Don't forget, if you didn't like this episode, still out of benevolence, give me that subscription. I would appreciate it. The like, the comments, the shares, it is always appreciated. And then don't forget to tune in on Tuesday for all of the latest, because we will be back here with a normal episode, just like normal, getting into all the nitty gritty, because really, honestly, it's more of the same. It's Joe Biden, his executive orders, his liberal rule. But we're going to get into that. We're going to dive into it, as well as more end of show segments. As always, I'm very excited for the future of the show. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Josiah Evertson, and this is The Glorious Rescue.